What is up, people? My name is Anton and welcome back to September. Today I'm going to be showing you how you can create and simulate realistic leaves in Cinema 4D using, you guessed it, cloth simulations. So this is something I literally taught myself today. I was walking along the canal earlier and I saw leaves blowing in the wind. It's autumn over here in the UK at the minute, and I thought that'd be a really sick thing to try and simulate, and it worked out better than I anticipated. So without any further ado, I'm going to link the models and textures that I use for these leaves in the description so you guys can try and play along too. Pretty cool, and obviously yet another way of using these simulators. So let's give it a quick shot. We can go about opening C4D here, and I can quickly talk through the textures and FBX that I've got. So I actually sourced this online. I didn't make them myself because these textures are very high quality and quite well done. But surprisingly, the setup works pretty easily and quite well in Cinema 4D. So you can see the kind of textures we've got here. We've got a nice little variety, which is what I was after. The only comment I'd make about this technique in particular, or the way I'm going to do it, the way I'm going to use it, is that the leaves themselves don't actually have too much depth. And by too much, I mean none. They're pretty one-dimensional, or two-dimensional rather. I tried baking them using a cloth surface to sort of like give them a little more thickness. But the issue is that, as you can see here, they are just textures plastered on planes like this, which doesn't work so well for depth with the way it's structured, but it works pretty great for cloth simulators. So it depends on what kind of detail you're looking for, but for what I was after, I found this did a pretty good job. So this is in default C4D, obviously just physical renderer here, but you can see how the textures are sort of laid out. So the way we've got to think about this, if you're brand new to cloth simulators, I'm going to breeze through this a little bit, and I might not explain all of it in as much detail as I should. So take a look at some of my older videos if you want me to really go in depth about sort of the way cloth simulators work and things you need to bear in mind. But straight off the bat, things we can sort of notice are we have 0 subdivisions on these planes. So we need to get some of that going. We need to convert these materials from standard to octane and then simulate these planes and just attribute the textures to them and convert it to aces. Add a little bit of motion blur, sprinkle a little bit of look development, and we should be pretty good to go. So if firstly maybe we should just convert these to octane pretty much straight away. I had a comment yesterday asking if some of my stuff was actually relatable to Redshift, and I came to realise that a lot of it pretty much is. Like, I put Cinema 4D and octane in the title, but realistically, outside of the simulation itself and like a lot of the look development and camera positioning, pretty much everything you can do in Redshift 2. I am learning it currently, so I'm learning it outside of the octane videos that I'm pushing out. But if you get your HDRI set up and your cameras and literally attribute most of the materials in the same way, I know you can plug things in the diffuse channels and stuff like that, you should be able to get pretty cool renders in Redshift 2. So my stuff is fairly universal. I'm just die-hard octane at the minute because it's what I know the best, but there will be more stuff coming soon. So with that being said, hop into Old Faithful here. And we should be able to pretty easily convert these materials. In C4D, for some reason, well, the preset for this FBX, these materials are actually set to glass inside of Cinema 4D physical renderer, which I didn't know was possible. But I realised that when I highlighted them here, went to materials, convert materials, and realised that it generated 10 octane speculars. So that's something that we're going to want to change pretty quickly, otherwise we're getting some weird looks there. We can set that to glossy. I'm aware that leaves themselves are obviously there are subsurface scattering involved, but for the sake of this, we're not going that like in detail that close. It's more of like a concept sort of simulation that may come in a later video, because that is something that you can also achieve in octane, but it requires a little more physical reference and sort of all sorts of stuff about chlorophyll and light passing through leaves. It's complicated but also fairly interesting, so that is another rabbit hole we can get into later on. But for now, we can see in a bit better light sort of the way that the scene is structured here. So if we shoot a quick render here, we can see this isn't going to work properly because the opacity maps don't currently exist. So if we just shoot a quick save, we can go about fixing that up. So we don't need to worry about the color space or the structure too much for now. The reason I deleted those 2 leaves just there was because there was some weird noise in the corner, which I thought would be an issue, and these ones worked better for the last simulation. So we can take these and run. One thing I also bear in mind is that it got plugged into the normal here, but it's just a regular leaf. So this may be something we need to fix. I may cut the video and convert all these to normals using the technique of just literally importing into Photoshop, going 3D, exporting the normals. And then we need to duplicate this and get that plugged into the opacity map. The way I did it for the previous render was actually, I'll show you super quick, but if you plug that into opacity, you'll see that it does work, but it also changes the opacity of the leaf itself, which isn't what we want. And that's because the texture we're plugging into that isn't black and white like it should be. It's obviously a colored color space texture. So if we plug that in, we can sort of see, if we invert it, we can see that it's accurate. And there's a few ways of fixing that. So as a super quick fix for the previous one, what I did is I just grabbed the color correction node, put that there, and then turned the gamma all the way down, which seemed to work, but we still got that weird sort of blackness there. I believe there one way we can fix it. We maybe ought to set this to alpha, which also works. So that is a even quicker fix. A little bit of theory there which worked, but you still get these sort of dark points on it, and that is something I didn't fix in the last one, but I'm pretty sure that is down to the normal. So if you just give me a sec, I'm going to convert all of the textures of these to normals. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it, but just so I'm not reliving over the same stuff or sort of recapping, I'll cut so we can get to the simulating part. This is sort of just like texturing that we need to get out of the way first. So any sec. Sweet. So as I said, this is me being a bit perfectionist, but if we drag this texture in here, we could take a look at this and see that those dark spots aren't a part of it, which sort of makes me think that it really is the normal. But it's pretty easy to fix. I'm hoping that in theory we should be able to go to filter up here, 3D, generate normal map. I have covered this in the video, but it was just a super quick episode kind of explaining the function of it. And we should be able to go in here and it should give us a little dialogue here where we can sort of change the parts that we like. But I think this is pretty good as it is. I mean, I'm bearing in mind that obviously all of this won't actually be visible because of the opacity map. So I'm literally looking at the leaf bit here. You can adjust these how you like, but I mean, generally it's picking out a lot of the detail that you sort of want. You don't want it to be too veiny like that. So maybe we can move some of these up, but I mean, generally we're looking pretty good. So I'd say if you're doing this the same way I am, maybe move the medium up a little bit, but if anything, you can leave it the same. So we can hit OK on that. It's already fixed it for us. We can quick extrude as PNG. I'm going to make a new folder real quick for the normals so that we can dip into that and literally export these normals one by one. But just to test that everything works fine, we can head in here, just grab. Really need to get a new mouse, man. I really need to get a new mouse. You can go here, drag a leaf in, and replug that in the normal and see if that looks any better. Of course it does. Of course it does. That's fixed the issue. So now we have some nice cleaner leaves. So if you just give me a sec and then go through and do that for all the normals, and I'll be back in a hot minute. Amazing. So we're back in the cut here and we got all our normals exported. So we can now head to our leaf 2 and start replacing some of these. So firstly, let's head in here and just go into our textures normal setup and get leaf 2 imported. So you'll see that should do things quite nicely. We need to make sure we're duplicating this as well, plugging this into opacity and changing the type here to alpha. That's basically changing the way that Octane is reading the image texture. So you obviously got 3 settings here: normal, float, and alpha. Float is a general RGB like color space like image texture node, right? So that's what you plug into your diffuse. And then you've got alpha, which changes it to black and white. That's what you typically want in opacity, not really much else, because it almost literally thresholds it. Obviously you've got values for roughness, displacement, bump and stuff, but they're desaturated, but not quite purely black and white. That's something you'd want for opacity. And then you've got normal, which is obviously a normal map. You can have normal and fully textured ones too, but typically, I mean, it's normal. It's meant to be for normal maps, right? Just do what Octane says and make your stuff look better. Do you know what I mean? So we can head to leaf 5 here, got leaf 2 done. Replace this with our leaf 5. I've named them all the same, so it shouldn't be an issue. Just make sure we're hitting yes on that. And again, duplicating these through, making sure we're plugging these in, setting our things to work right. And I've done this the wrong way around here, which is fine. Quick swap, reload that to fix our normals up, and head to leaf 6, and we can rinse and repeat this process real quick. We are going to have to change all of these to aces once we do that too. That's something I have to bear in mind, but no problem. Just got 4 quick more to do. Just make sure we reload that in. Take a look at leaf 7. Head here, duplicate, chuck in opacity, set it to alpha. 1 more, plug it in normal. Change that to leaf. What leaf is it? Forgotten what leaf it is. Hold on, leaf 7. Plug it in there. Make sure we change the type here to normal. Reload that in. Oh, I've messed it up. Just like that. And got 8 and 9 and 10. So do. Change you to leave 8. Yep. And then da. And maybe shoot that quick reload. Sometimes you need to do that. To leave 9. Making sure this is all good for us to simulate in texture so it doesn't look off at all. Leave 9, yes. Reload, duplicate, opacity. You get pretty quick at this once you get your head around the software. And we can go back here and literally take in 10, yes. Reload, duplicate, plug it in, set to alpha, and before you know it, we've got our leaves set up. Leaves set up nicely. You can see they're 2-dimensional, but it's okay because we're going to create the depth. We're going to create the depth using simulations. So you can go back here. Let's take a look. We can set this to aces super quick. But set it to path tracing, and then really quickly I'm going to bolt through and make sure that I'm changing all of these to aces. I think there's actually a way I can do it here, which might make it a little bit simpler. In fact, can I just select all of these? You learn something new every day. Have I just managed to really? Sweet. So that is a quick way that you can change all your diffuse maps to aces. That's put a massive smile on my face. And if you quickly reload that, we have our. Wait, let me just double check. No, that has changed into aces. Nice one. So now what we can do is simulate these. So if we close Octane super quick, I can show you exactly how we go about doing this. So these need more subdivisions first. Luckily, thank you to Maxon, we have the wonderful remesh tool, which makes that pretty damn easy. We can just take all these, drag them in the remesh tool, set this to a pretty high count. I think I used 5,000 before, because we want these subdivisions so that they kind of like move realistically. And we can grab 8, 9 and 10, so just give these a little more space because I'm seeing them two are intersecting, which I don't like. We can make sure we shoot this a resave. See on this, we've got our remesh leaves, as easy as that. So now it is just a case of simulating them. So we're going to duplicate these real quick, Control C, Control V, move these up just so we've got some more leaves. And I'm going to rotate these, but I want to rotate them all together just so they're a little bit similar to the box simulation, just so we've got more of them and they're not all next to each other. So these are probably, this is a good amount of leaves I'd say for now that you can sort of simulate. You can duplicate this again if you want. It's just going to slow down the simulation a tiny bit. But what you want to do is get some cloth effectors on all of these now. So we can click Alt G on this, but I think typically you want each one sort of have its own effector on it. So if we just grab cloth there, don't need to change the values too much. We can just drag click or control click and just get a cloth tag on each of these leaves here, and we can increase our size here. We can change the FPS from 24 to 30. And if we play this, our leaves are going to just fall, but we can do that just to make sure that our simulation is running. Of course it is. So obviously to change that, like we always do, make sure we're setting our gravity off. Although I say that, we don't actually need to do that for now. We can, but remember 981 is a pretty good like representation of gravity. I'm actually going to leave it on for this because I will show you exactly why. My idea for the initial simulation was to have a wind force down here, which sort of blew them up with a load of turbulence and sort of like scattered them all over the place, right? But I wanted them to fall back down again. So that's why I kept the gravity there. So what we can do is we can head to simulate forces, get ourselves a wind. We want to make sure this is rotated facing upwards just like this. So we can set that to 90, move it down to about here, and you'll see it does nothing at the moment because the gravity is too strong. So we need to change the strength of this wind and also actually move it into the include list for these tags. So we can drag it and drop it there. And now you'll see if we take this and move the speed to maybe 500, maybe just to get an effect, it should blow it. But it's slowing it down at least, but still not strong enough. 5,000. We can also change the mode from acceleration to force, but 5,000 managed to do it by the looks of it. There tends to be a threshold whereby if you're counteracting the gravity. See, so the way I'm thinking about this is the gravity was minus 981 or something, and the wind speed is now 1,000. So if I was to make this 981, let's just test this. I'm guessing we'll be completely on par with the gravity and probably stay still. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. The more you know. But what we want to do is have this a little stronger than the gravity. So we can always make this 1,500 just so we get a little bit of movement up. But I say we want quite fast movement up. But we're going to need to do a similar sort of process that we did with the vinyls yesterday actually. So we want to take this wind and keyframe it and then move it down over time, otherwise it's going to blow all the time and it's going to just send them to high heavens. So what we can do is have it up like this and it will blow them and then let them fall down. They all fall pretty uniform at the moment, which is where the turbulence is going to come in, but just bearing in mind that is sort of the look and the process of the gravity or the physics in general that we're going to go for. So let's take a look. We can tweak that later. We've got our keyframes already laid out. So if we want to go ahead and grab ourselves a turbulence effector, we can select our tags one more time. Take our turbulence, drag it in. It's going to be on top of the wind. And we want to make this strong. So I'd say 50 and just whack the scale up to maybe something small for now, so 25. And let's take a look at what that kind of does. It should start to wiggle them around a little more, which looks good. This makes it look quite a lot like paper. The leaves, obviously their scale will be quite small anyway, so I'd consider sort of upping the scale maybe to 100. We will make two turbulence, so they sort of like work with each other. But something like that is more what I was after with the state of the leaves. So we've got that. And I like the way that it sort of goes up and then scatters. I think it looks pretty cool. And it also gives a pretty good sense of depth like that. So that is pretty much step one. And then if you wanted to, we can get a second turbulence, which we're obviously going to have the scale a little bit higher. Best way to use turbulence is basically by doing that. You can have two, one with the smaller scale, one with the higher one. And so it looks a little strange on their own, but together they work quite well. So for this, we can have the scale at maybe 500%. So strength at 25. Let's take a look what we're dealing with. Pretty small effect there, but it's almost like a bigger wind source is the way of thinking about it. You know, it's what's going to scatter the leaves, and generally you're creating a pretty cool. The leaves have disappeared, but you're generating a pretty cool look here. So again, this is the bit where you can sort of tweak to your heart's content. Fit this to your scene, you know, set things up to see what you're looking for, but the concept is here. So that is what it looks like inside of Cinema 4D, and this is the part that I mean. From this point, you can either go to Redshift to get all these materials set up, or you can go into Octane. Obviously, my choice is Octane just for the ease of it. But if we get our setup done, so if we make maybe it's 1,500, that's what I had before. We can lock this in. We've already got Aces set up, so we can just get our Octane camera, take this, and just like we always do, get that set up for something here. We can get our some of these up and just figure out exactly where our, I think I might be lost in the viewport here. Unsure where our leaves are, but I think there they are. Right. So we can take these. At this point, I'm pretty happy with the simulation, so we can grab our tags and quickly cache them. Shouldn't take too long, although I say that we've got about 20 tags, so we'll see if it caches them one by one or does them all in one. So now we can play this through and scrub it, sort of art direct a little bit, or see where we want our leaves to be. I think these in general look pretty good around here. And I sort of liked zooming in a little more in the previous one, so if I set this even to 150, it shows some nicer detail, I find, with the leaves. So we can get the little blow up. And this is sort of where it's reaching the top, so I kind of preferred the idea of watching them fall down. So we can have them blow up like this. And then fall down. And you can see, thanks to the cloth, we can see the way these sort of like flip and sometimes even interact with each other. I think on the previous render there was a bit where the sort of leaves wrapped around each other, which looks really sick. So you are actually able to get some really nice results out of some not so nice original, C4D based undetailed models. Good textures though. And just like that, you can see the kind of result we're getting. So sort of like finish this off and make this look a little nicer. What I did was, of course, grab myself a quick HDRI, two, but one was, of course, set to visible environment. We can head in here and get something which is going to give us some nice light rays. Particularly, I wanted something which will have the a lot of sunlight on this one, so I didn't want something too stylized. I think I literally went to Paradise here and just got something like, this one's actually a little more sheltered than I thought this would be good. Not the backyard, but the Brazil statue yard. It's actually quite dark. So maybe we can try something a little different here. I really want something natural, potentially something in a, you've got wigwams morning. That looks like a quite nice morning sort of setup, which looks cool. You can set this to aces. Give this a little quick shoot about, depending on what you're after. At this point we can turn it up a little bit, but see, I find like this is too dark. I want more sunlight. So we might as well just go sunlight mode and get ourselves something like this. Drop that in, get some nice shadows. We can see we're already getting some pretty nice detail on the leaves. Way better. These leaves actually look more autumn-like now. So we can take a look at these. Maybe shoot this quick rotate. Obviously, do what you like. Might switch the power to something like 2. And what we can do just for that extra little bit of what we like, we can head in here, make sure we're enabling motion blur, set this to 0.03, and then getting ourselves some C4D Octane object tags. And let's just drag one, control click on each one, just so each leaf, and we don't need to worry about putting on the null, whether that's actually affecting all of them. And then if we play through now, we should see some nice little bits of motion blur, if it decides to. Let's just double check. Does seem to be working. Is that motion blur activating? Apparently not. Let's just double check. It should do. So get to 0.3. Maybe let's head in here, see if motion blur set to maybe transform / vertex. That fixed it. So sometimes you need to do that. But now you can see we're getting our nice motion blur working. And the leaves look pretty damn good. Nicely realistic. So obviously explore with this, because you are working in 3D, right? You're working in depth. So if you wanted to get a super detailed shot, hop into another camera here, maybe whack the focal length up. But you could literally, if you get a little bit of freedom here, toggle this off so it's not ruining our shot. You could find something which or you'd obviously want to duplicate them more maybe, so you had more of a sort of money shot here. But you could find an angle where you're getting a lot of depth with the leaves. Maybe something like, I think this here looks pretty good. Or around maybe here. I think you definitely want more for something like this, but you can zoom in, obviously get your, or maybe zoom out a little bit. Sometimes the camera goes a little funky. Take something like this. You really want almost something like that. Set the focal length to even maybe 200, something crazy. And I was going to do a sort of like depth of field shot, right? But bear in mind, you really want more to sort of fill it up. I'm looking in the viewport as I'm doing this, just so I can sort of get anything I'm after. Let's say, just for the proof of concept, we can sort of grab something like that, go on our thin lens, depth of field, untick that, and focus on, say, this leaf. This leaf's what we want to focus on. Set our aperture up to something which works. So we've got 20 there, maybe 50, and we can literally click about onto what leaf we want, focus it. And these move in depth too, right? So we can play these and have some really cool, nice leaves flowing through our scene. So if you're working on an actual scene, you're thinking of what to add, you're making movement, and you're struggling with not animating the megascans plants, and you want something to like blow through, you can get some motion blur on these and make something pretty sick. So that is pretty much the tutorial. I thought this was a pretty cool way of achieving a kind of idea that I had. And yeah, I hope you guys can put it to good use. So with that being said, thank you for watching. I hope you found something useful. I hope no one else has done this yet, otherwise I'm look like a bit of an idiot. And you can render this out and use it in your scenes. You can even just export the cameras from a scene that you're using or a project and just render this out with a black screen and then composite it later on if you want to. But I think it's a pretty cool way of just whacking it in the same composition. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you very soon in the next video.